Jim Harbaugh was asked directly if he thought the Chargers could end up with Colston Loveland, and he downplayed it, but I think there's a path to him sliding, and he would be the dream pick at 22.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, or listen wherever you get your podcasts from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, heading into the draft, one thing is clear. The Chargers absolutely need to get their next pass-catching tight end of the future. And looking at how things may unfold, there is a possibility that Colston Loveland could fall right into the Chargers' laps. And so we're going to talk about that possibility. And did the Chargers' offense actually get better before the draft started? I think there's a large reason why the Chargers' offense definitely got better. And also, Quentin Johnston's job is absolutely not in jeopardy. I'm going to tell you exactly why.
And that being said, it's very hard to kind of look and see what his role is going to be, especially if the Chargers add another receiver to the room. But today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. David, it is buy or sell Thursday because of the weird week that we're having here, but excited to get into the biggest Chargers storylines and overreactions, including this one from GC on YouTube, who says, buy or sell, if Colston Loveland is there at pick 22, the Chargers will take him. And I'm buying this 100%. And we just talked yesterday a little bit about Jim Harbaugh being asked at the NFL coaches meetings if the Chargers could end up with Colston Loveland. He said, chances are there's a lot of other teams, 256 players are getting drafted, and he's probably going to be playing against us, which is still probably true. But not only do I think the Chargers would take him if he's there at 22, I think out of the kind of realistic guys that could slide to them but probably should go before him, I think he is absolutely the dream scenario for the Chargers given the guys we've watched so far.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he fits exactly what the Chargers are really kind of desperately needing and what they should be looking for, right? Colston Loveland is a guy who is an absolute natural pass catcher, runs great crisp routes, has good speed and agility, and obviously there's that connection there because he played under Jim Harbaugh directly at Michigan. So we all know that the connections and the relationships are very important to Jim Harbaugh. You see it in the coaches that he's hired and the players that he's brought in. If he has any kind of connection to an individual player, he's going to do his darndest to try to bring that player in. And it just so happens that the player that we're talking about fits perfectly with what the Chargers are looking for and what they need.
And, of course, we know the Chargers last year took 2 Michigan players. So we know they are willing to cross those lines and are wanting to bring in as many guys from that system as they possibly can. I'm sure they would have brought in more if they could have. And I think as far as why it would make sense and why it's the dream pick, I mean, the Chargers don't have any long-term receiving options at tight end that you feel great about. And I would say you could look at it and say the Chargers don't have any long-term receiving options, period, that you for sure feel good about besides Ladd McConkey. Yeah. And not only should you look at this as the Chargers getting, a tight end that's worth a first-round pick, which is very rare, would probably be the first tight end in most classes taken if it weren't for Tyler Warren, who would also be a dream pick here, but just is much more unrealistic.
Yeah.
He is a guy that not only is one of the best tight ends, but is also just one of the best pass-catching players, period, in this draft class. He would add more juice to your offense. He would add an explosiveness to your offense. And I think there are, there is an argument here for a Tet McMillan and him sliding and him being your dream pick. Or David, you like Matthew Golden. He's a guy that could be available at 22. But I think as far as all of the options that are a dream pick that you need somebody to slide but would fit perfectly, I think it's him. And I don't think it's as unrealistic for him to get to 22 as people think. I mean, the latest Chargers mock draft tracker where they go through all of the different mock drafts, 4 of the 14 experts picked Colston Loveland at 22 for the Chargers. He was the name that popped up the most on that list. Second place, Matthew Golden with 3. The other part of this is, too, per the Ringer's list of draft needs, only one team ahead of the Chargers has tight end in their top 3 needs, and it's the Colts, and it's their number 1 need. The Colts will likely take a tight end. They lost 2 important offensive linemen, so they could go a different direction too. And they have other needs too, but I think that's the one spot that people are chalking in right now. That's going to be a tight end. I think the hard thing with Tyler Warren is even if it's not your biggest need, he's a tight end that you would kind of take regardless of need just because he's the best player available. A team like the Jets who are picking in the top 10. But if he were to fall outside of the top 10, Tyler Warren that is, and then he goes to the Colts, then it's like, okay, well, there is a clear pathway here for the Chargers to get this guy.
Absolutely. I mean, after the Colts, which, Dan just talked about, like they clearly need a tight end and they're probably going to take one. And so, depending on what the teams perform, like the Jets, what they do, if they slide, if they take one of the big wide receivers or take one of the top edge rushers or, maybe even a Mason Graham, obviously that if he's available, I'm sure that would be a very interesting pick and a player that you would absolutely love to add to your football team. But as far as later after the Colts, I mean, the only other team that kind of comes to mind possibly is the Denver Broncos if they want to kind of double up and add another type, Joker type tight end.
Sure.
That might make sense.
Because they have Evan Ingram, right? That's why you're saying another one. They got a short-term option, but it wouldn't totally preclude them from taking someone like Colston Loveland.
No, yeah, it would not. But I think if it's not them, then there's a clear runway straight from Colston Loveland to the Chargers at 22. And I could realistically see it happening, and I would be overjoyed if I got to see that. You pair Justin Herbert with a legit pass-catching tight end, a young tight end that he can grow with, that he can build that chemistry with, that they can go make a ton of plays together. And we know when you give Justin Herbert a tight end, whether it's Jared Cook, whether it's Hunter Henry, a guy that can catch a football, he is going to get the football in your hands.
Yeah, and I don't think the Tyler Conklin signing affects this. I mean, it lets you ease him in actually a little easier, I think, since you have him. You're not desperate at tight end as you were before Tyler Conklin because we know Will Dissly is savvy enough to fill that position when he needs to, right? But you needed to upgrade. The Chargers already upgraded at that spot. But first, Colston Loveland, a potential vertical threat to help with the explosiveness of your offense. Great hands, only a 3.4% drop rate last season. And a guy that can make the spectacular catch as well, which is just not something the Chargers had a lot of. Obviously, you have Mike Williams outside, but this is a guy that would bring that at the tight end position. And even though he's a work in progress as a blocker, as a move blocker, a guy you can have run around to hit moving targets, he can already do that, and the willingness is already there. He would be a great pick for the Chargers if he slid. It might not happen, but as far as dream picks go, I think he's up there. But let's get to this one from Michael Mims, a buy or sell here. Buy or sell, the Chargers use more draft picks on defense than offense. The fans want offense, but they should trust in Chef Joe Ortiz. David, you buying or selling that?
I think when you just go down the line of the needs on both sides of the football and you kind of rank the hierarchy of which, needs are more important, I think it's probably actually offense, that you're probably going to prioritize because guard, you need another guard. So I think that's a guarantee they're going to try to draft an offensive lineman. Tight end, we know. Running back, easily they could add another running back. Wide receiver, I think all of those are going to be targets for the Chargers. And then on defense, I think it's really just 2 for sure positions that I feel like you got to address: defensive line and edge. And I think probably corner, right? Maybe linebacker if you want to get somebody to kind of be that heir apparent, or maybe that, that special teams type player. Who knows? They got 4 6-round picks, so we'll see what they do with them. But I just think priority wise, I think the higher priorities are on offense. So that's where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, I would even add more to that. Look at it right now. The Chargers don't have legitimate, for sure, long-term options at center, left guard, swing tackle, wide receiver outside of Ladd McConkey, pass-catching tight end, backup quarterback, and also running back. That's 7 picks right there. They have 10 picks if they use all those 10 picks. So I would sell it. I still think offense, especially when you're talking about depth and backups and things like that, there are more needs there and more reasonable picks that you could take on day 3. You can get a potential tackle, that can turn into something on day 3. You can get your backup quarterback, a long-term option potentially there on day 3. Whereas like those other positions defensively, you need to add an heir apparent to your edge rushers right now with top-end talent, and the defensive line needs a top-end guy because they have a lot of rotational pieces. So I would sell it. I would say offense is the bigger need, but Is the Chargers offense already better? Will it be better in 2025? We're getting into all that and more on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Imagine watching your favorite team live, feeling the energy of the crowd, and witnessing unforgettable moments. There's nothing like experiencing a big game in person. Me and David have both seen big games. It is a one-in-a-lifetime, sometimes kind of opportunity when you're seeing that big of a game. Like if you're seeing a big tournament game going on right now, if you're about to go see a playoff basketball or hockey game, it's a really, truly special moment. And I think when you're talking about those special moments, with Game Time, you can make sure you're getting the experience that you want. Because with Game Time picks, it makes curation so much easier because they'll filter out the fluff. Not just all the tickets, they're just going to give you the best deals. They're going to show you what your sight line is going to be from that specific seat, so you know you don't get there and are disappointed by what your view is. And also, you get the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. When you're talking about moments like this, you want to make sure they go well, and that's why you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, we have more buy or sells to get into on this buy or sell Thursday, and we have a lot of really good ones, and we might even repurpose them tomorrow for Fan Mail Friday because you guys in the everydayers showed up so well for this. But we do have this one here from Miguel Quiros, who says, this is obviously before the draft, but buy or sell, the offense improves next season. With the kind of projection of what you're going to get in the draft, I think it'd be very easy to buy this. But I think, David, there's still an argument, kind of like you alluded to earlier, where even if the Chargers started the season right now, I would probably buy that they're going to be better offensively.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm 100% buying it. I can sit here confidently right now before we even get to the draft and say that the Chargers offense is already in better shape than it was last season. So they got a workhorse running back, a guy that's durable, and say what you want about his playing style, but he's there every single day. He's the exact type of player that Jim Harbaugh wants, that they coveted, that they signed and brought in. They got a legitimate veteran pass-catching tight end with Tyler Conklin, a guy that, has put up basically 50 catches almost every season. Another guy who has been available and has very, very sure and reliable hands. They also brought in a true X wide receiver with Mike Williams, who just so happens to have a lot of chemistry with your quarterback, Justin Herbert. They obviously combined to create some of the most amazing plays in Chargers, recent history, quite
Absolutely.
frankly. I mean, It's been quite amazing. And obviously, the very, very largest reason why the Chargers offense is obviously going to be better is the mountain man, Mekhi Becton, being brought in for the offensive line. And not only that, I think that's a guaranteed upgrade. I think we all can see that and say, hey, that's going to be someone who's going to improve the offensive line. But also, there's the potential for Andre James to step in and be your starting center. And I think everybody would agree, if he's able to get to his 2023 form, where he was a very well-rounded center, then I think that you could see legitimate upgrades at 2 out of the 3 spots that we were looking for them to upgrade in free agency before we even get to the draft. So I think you can feel pretty confident that even right now, the Chargers offense is in better shape.
Right, with 10 draft picks coming up. And,
exactly.
Obviously it would be shocking if they didn't use one of their top 3 picks on a potential impact player for your offense. I mean, I would at least be shocked. But yeah, I mean, I think when you're looking at the biggest losses, it's easily Josh Palmer and J.K. Dobbins offensively. The biggest loss as a team was Poona Ford.
Yeah.
Offensively, it's those two guys, and you have replacements with Najee Harris, who might be a better fit and will be healthy. And I mean, if you're talking about how much the Chargers struggle without J.K. Dobbins, that would be a mark in the favor of Najee Harris. And then Mike Williams, who might not be the better receiver at this point in his career than Josh Palmer is, but might be a better fit for what the Chargers need him for, especially with Ladd McConkey hogging so many of the slot snaps, which is probably where Josh Palmer actually fit the best, if we're being honest. But tight end room is better. Your offensive line room, even with whatever happens with Andre James, is more talented than it was before and has better depth than you did last year. And you still have the draft coming up. Plus, just what all the returning players get in the second year with the continuity in the offense, especially, Ladd McConkey was super quiet the first 6-7 weeks of the season before he even broke out. He's going in, on the ground running as the number one option and knowing how to use him better than he did last year, plus Justin Herbert's the second year of his system.
Right away.
Which he's only done twice. This is only the second time that Justin Herbert will be returning to the same offensive coordinator in his NFL career. But
and college, for that matter, too.
Well, college, he did have return for another one. But, yeah, he had a lot of offensive coordinators in college as well. I think it was 3 or 4, and I think it was 3 and 4 seasons. So
exactly.
Either way, I mean, it's been a ton of turmoil as far as his offenses go. He will be returning, and that is worth something, even if you don't believe in Greg Roman fully. But we have a great voicemail here from Athir, who's wondering how early the Chargers could end up taking a guard to potentially compete for that left guard spot.
Daniel, David, this is your boy Athir. Buy or sell Wednesday, an overreaction. The Chargers will go guard in round 2 because my coach does not trust anybody on that left side. I'm buying it. What are you saying? David, I cannot wait to hear you on this. I love you.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I'm guaranteed right now the slot in the second round, but I am gonna buy that it's gonna be in the first 4 rounds of the draft. I think they know that they need to continue their mission on trying to become a mean physical offensive line, and that continues with bringing in the type of players that you want to have on your offensive line. And I think obviously they have a lot of bodies available for that left guard spot, whether it's Jamari Sawyer or Bradley Bozeman or apparently Andre James. Like, there's several bodies there, but nobody that inspires confidence that it's going to be an upgrade over what Zion Johnson was able to provide you last season. So I do feel like, like we've talked about, they are not going to look at and remember what they saw last year on that interior and not continue to work to make improvements on that. Now, the most realistic way that they can make those improvements is by adding a offensive lineman with their first 4 picks in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, the second round specifically is hard because the last thing
Right.
you want them to do is reach with their second round pick because they only have 3 top 100 picks. If there's someone that's worth a pick, someone slides, absolutely take them there. But I think when you're looking at who would be available in the second round and kind of the sweet spot if you're not going to get one of the top guys, there's one interior offensive lineman for Daniel Jeremiah in between the picks 25 and 50. So guys that could potentially slide to you at 55 where the Chargers pick. There are 8 edge rushers and defensive tackles in that same range between 25 and 50 on just Daniel Jeremiah's, best available guys. But I think that shows you maybe there's a different position that becomes the sweet spot in round 2. And maybe it's not the best place to take an offensive guard. Could the Chargers take a guard in the first 2 rounds? Absolutely. Will they specifically get one in the second round? That's hard. But I think to Athir's point here, what he's making is maybe Jim Harbaugh isn't as sold on that left side as he made it seem to be at the coaches meeting. And I would agree with that. There's definitely a chance that happens. Then again, it's Jim Harbaugh. Maybe he's just telling us exactly how it is, and he actually doesn't have any subterfuge going on. So let's get to this last one here from Young Hayden on Instagram. Thank you to everyone who hit us up, not just on Instagram, but on YouTube, on Twitter, wherever you hit us up at. But he says, buy or sell, the Chargers will have Andre James starting at center with Zion Johnson still starting at left guard this season. What do you think, David?
Yeah, honestly, I think right now, with the way things are constructed, I think that's the most likely outcome. Obviously, barring them adding someone high on the draft, giving them that opportunity. But I do feel like, hey, Andre James, 24 or less pressures in 4 straight seasons at the center position. This guy is a very, very good pass protecting center. And also in 2023, he had a very well-rounded game, like I mentioned earlier. 74.6 grade, 75 run block, 71.2 pass block, less than 20 pressures allowed. So I do feel like he's the best option there at center. We'll see if Zion Johnson is a savant at the center position. But I do feel like right now, even if it is Andre James at center, Mekhi Becton at right guard, and Mr. Zion back at left guard, I still feel a lot better about the offensive line the way that's constructed, if that's how it ends up being.
I think the hard thing about this is it feels like they don't want him to play left guard.
Right.
Like that's what everything that's been out seems like they don't want him to play left guard anymore. It might be disguised as, hey, we think he'll make a great center, but it almost feels like they're punting on him being their left guard in 2025. Now, things can change. If they get out there and he's an obvious disaster, maybe they put him back at left guard. I mean, honestly, this is the best combination they could put together right now. I would much rather have Zion Johnson at left guard and Andre James at center than the inverse.
Yeah.
Then Zion Johnson even at center and Trey Pipkins at left guard.
Right.
Or Bradley Bozeman at left guard. Like the best possible scenario right now is Rashawn Slater, Zion Johnson, Andre James, Mekhi Becton, and Joe Alt in that order from left tackle to right tackle. That's the best combination they have right now. I just don't know where their priorities are as far as where they want these guys to play, because right now it seems like they're, all in on Zion Johnson being
all
their
over
center.
The place.
Yeah, and I mean, what happens in the draft could have a big impact on this,
Sure.
but I do think that there's obviously a chance they add another guard, and it seems like right now they don't want Zion Johnson to be their left guard. Will it end up turning out that way when the pads come on and they actually get into it?
Maybe.
Sure, there's a chance. It just doesn't seem like that's what they want to happen right now. But we still have more to get into, including if Quentin Johnston's roster spot is in trouble, if the Chargers take Keenan Allen or a first-round wide receiver, and much more. Even where is Brenden Rice? Will Brendan Rice have an impact? We're getting into all that on today's Locked On Chargers podcast. All right, David, we still have some more great buy or sells to get into here, but thank you to everyone who made us your first listen today. If you need a second listen, you want to keep up with the NFL draft, make Locked On NFL Draft your second listen so you can keep up with everything, especially with all of the craziness with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez, keeping you updated with all the biggest draft news on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. David, let's get to this buy or sell here. That is still somewhat of a sentiment amongst the Chargers fan base as far as the polarization of Quentin Johnston and, what his impact will be in 2025, which I think is pretty murky at this point. But this is Mario Rubio from Instagram saying, buy or sell, Quentin Johnston will be cut by the end of the preseason if they sign Keenan Allen or draft a wide receiver in round 1. I obviously, by the way we talked about this, I know that you're selling this.
Yeah, obviously I'm selling it. Like, first and foremost, if they're going to cut anybody, Brennan Rice and Jalen Reagor are going to get cut well before Quentin Johnston's going to get cut. I'm going to say that right now. That's obvious. I mean, that's just looking at the hierarchy of the wide receivers that are on the roster. Also, you know how many wide receivers had more touchdowns than Quentin Johnston in 2024? 12 in the entire National Football League. So you guys need to start putting some more respect on Quentin Johnston's name. I'm really tired of seeing all of the jokes and all of the memes and all of the people that are just trying to downplay what he has done. He has gotten better, and we've talked about this on this show as well. Also, there's 12 wide receivers that had more drops than Quentin Johnston did, because I know there's that sentiment out there that he can't catch anything, but there are other wide receivers, even ones with like stats, like Jalen Waddle, who had 744 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had 8 drops. Oh, also, there's Amari Cooper, who had 12 drops on 85 targets and only 547 receiving yards. So let's put it in perspective here, what he actually is and what he has provided. Is he a flawed player? Yeah, he has parts of his game he absolutely still needs to work on. But to sit here and say that he's going to get cut if they bring in another wide receiver doesn't make any sense, because there are other players on this roster that will clearly and obviously be let go before Quentin Johnston will.
Yeah, I think to your point, I mean, right now, at worst, he's wide receiver 3. If you're putting Mike Williams ahead of him, it's Ladd, then Mike Williams, and then Quentin Johnston, right? Adding an addition like this only pushes him to wide receiver 4 probably, right? Not wide receiver 5 or wide receiver 6, where you kind of be on the bubble. I think that the fan hate and stuff like that, being the 13th highest in drops probably isn't a great, illustration of how good he is. But I think to your point, he was a touchdown scorer last year. Some of that's broken coverages and things like that. There's obvious flaws in his roster, and I think there's parts of his game that are never going to get to the point that's going to satisfy fans. I think at a certain point you are kind of what you are. Still a valuable skill set to have on your team, though, with how physical he is and how good he is after the catch. But it does feel like it is more matchup dependent. And I think when you're talking about Quentin Johnston specifically, the hard thing is it's just hard to trust him. It really is, because he did have a game with 13 catches and 186 yards in week 18 against the Raiders. Whatever you feel about that Raiders team, that's still a big stat line that most receivers didn't put together in 2024. At the same time, in your 2 biggest games against the Ravens and the Texans in 2024, you had 10 targets, 0 receptions, and 4 drops. Period. That's what it is. Now, I don't think he's going to get cut. I also don't think that you can roll into this season hoping that he's going to make another giant leap and just develop parts of his game that might never get there. So I don't think you can depend on Quentin Johnston to be a gigantic part in your offense, but I think that the hate has also gone way too far, because if Quentin Johnston was the answer, we wouldn't be clamoring for a wide receiver in round 1, right? Like, that just is what it is. If you felt like he was the long-term wide receiver too, we wouldn't be having all these conversations. Now, is he a guy that gets cut? No, that's not going to happen, especially because his money is already spent by the Chargers, so they don't save anything by getting rid of him. But let's get to the next thing here, which has gotten a lot of smoke. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, and that is a Keenan Allen reunion. It's time to put our money where our mouths are. Is this move going to happen? That's what Isaac wants to know.
Hey, Daniel. Hey, David. It's Isaac from Houston again. First and foremost, happy birthday to your daughter, Dylan. Awesome. Happy first birthday to her. My buy or sell is, are we getting the band back together? With Keenan still out there, unsigned. Mike Williams obviously is back with us. I would love it. Like I said, Justin definitely needs another weapon. And like I said, with Keenan out there, might as well just get the band back together. Just wondering if you guys are buying or selling that. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you, of course, for the birthday wishes to Dilly. Love that and love her. As far as Keenan Allen, we talked about this a little bit yesterday because, of course, Jim Harbaugh makes waves by saying anything is possible. And anything is possible. It is still possible. But, David, if you had to buy or sell it at this moment, not knowing what they're going to do in the draft, not knowing what they could potentially even do the rest of free agency or if Keenan could sign somewhere else, are you buying or selling that Keenan Allen is going to be on this roster this year?
I'm going to sell it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think if this was a move that the Chargers wanted to make, they could have made it already. They have the money. That is not an issue whatsoever. But I think they understand that the skill set that he brings to the table is just quite frankly redundant with what Ladd McConkey provides, which he's faster and been more productive. That's just the fact of the matter. Now, as far as Keenan Allen's future in football, just in general, I think that's going to be dictated by how the draft unfolds. Whether that's with the Chargers or with another team, I think he is not going to sign with any team until after the draft and all of those picks are all determined.
Well, I think the hard thing here is that Keenan Allen himself said he either wanted to go back to Chicago or he wanted to go back to LA. And that leaves two options. Now, the Rams ended up signing, right, Devontae Adams and half Cooper Kupp already. That seems unlikely. The Chargers burnt that bridge there. And that's the one part of this that we just don't know still to this point. Does Keenan Allen want to come back? He reposted the picture of Mike Williams saying, run it back turbo on Instagram. So maybe, he knows what he's doing there. I would have to believe.
Sure.
At the same time, he knows that things wouldn't be the same and can never kind of be the same. So as far as how much Keenan Allen wants to come back and how much he would only choose between those three teams, I think is still very much up in the air, because I think if a contender comes knocking, which they might after the draft, then it happens. I think as far as why haven't they signed him, if they're going to sign him, he would count against the compensatory pick until the draft. If the Chargers wanted to wait and not affect that because we know they care about it so much, they would wait till after the draft. Now, if the buy or sell was if the Chargers don't take a wide receiver on days 1 or 2 of the draft, will they bring back Keenan Allen? That's something I'd be more likely to buy. If they don't end up actually bringing another difference maker into that room in the draft, then I think everything's on the table. And I think at the end of the day, you're more talented with Keenan Allen this year with the way that room looks than if he's not on the team. How much that affects everyone else and what that role would be is yet to be determined. But let's get to this last one here from Corey McLaughlin, who says, buy or sell, Brendan Rice will see the field this season and be an impact player in 2025. A lot of Brennan Rice buy or sells, David. I know he's an enigma with this team, and it's very hard to know what his role is going to be. What do you think here?
I mean, I would love nothing more than to see Brennan Rice succeed. I truly would. And he has a skill set that I think could be utilized. Just going back to my notes on him, so he's excellent blocker, can put his foot in the ground and stop quickly. Yak via strength, can track the ball well over his shoulder, good use of body control. I mean, those are definitely aspects that were missing in the Chargers offense last year. Now, obviously, some of that stuff is being provided now with Mike Williams and what he brings to the table. But with Brendan Rice, the only time that we got to see him on the football field is he was lining up in the wrong spot and caused the Chargers a penalty, which didn't even register him as being on the field for a single snap. And that was really it. We didn't see him at all the rest of the season. He also had an injury we don't really know anything about. So the only conclusions that we can draw is that the Chargers coaching staff did not trust Brennan Rice to be on the football field. We don't know what that is. We can say maybe that's playbook related. And if it is, hopefully he was in the playbook and really trying to know that backwards and forwards. So when he gets his opportunity next, he's ready to hit the ground running and not have any questions about that aspect and just let his physical gifts go out there and show themselves on the football field.
This is what I'll say about Brendan Rice. I hope this isn't the case. Let me start by saying that.
Agreed.
I think at this point, it's more likely that Brendan Rice gets cut from the team than has a huge impact on the Chargers offense in 2025. I just think that's where things are at right now. I mean, David, what he was alluding to there was the Cardinals game in which Brendan Rice is on the field. The Chargers end up getting a delay of game, I believe, or burning a timeout, but it's Justin Herbert screaming at seemingly Brendan Rice. You can't know for sure, but Brendan Rice disappeared from the field and from the season after that, so pretty clear. And it's hard not to think, okay, well, is the reason he couldn't get on the field because of playbook issues, because the sample size of what we saw was so small? That's all we have to go by, right?
Yeah.
But right now, even with where things stand, he's behind Ladd McConkey, he's behind Quentin Johnston, he's behind Mike Williams, probably behind Darius Davis and Jalen Reagor too. And you'd be like, Jalen Reagor, and I'd be like, yeah, he was a healthy scratch in favor of Jalen Reagor at times.
And they
last
re-signed
season.
Jalen Reagor.
And they brought Jalen Reagor back. So it's hard to know just how the Chargers feel about him. Could he be a valuable piece behind Mike Williams and a guy who brings at least a little bit of the same skill set when they're really the only guys that provide that on the roster right now? Absolutely. Will he have that chance? I don't know. It felt like he was making waves at camp, and then he just kind of totally fell off the face of the earth. But at the end of the day, he's a 7th-round pick, and you're not going to be kept around if you're not making contributions to the team. So I hope we see more of Brendan Rice. I hope he turns it all around like he told everyone he was going to do when he dropped really far in the draft to the 7th round. I hope he can find that fire and be that 3rd or 4th round pick he was always supposed to be, but it's just so hard to tell right now, and we'll see what the Chargers do in the draft and how much that changes that picture, because if they do add to the draft, it makes it even more unlikely that I'll be on the team in 2025. But thank you to everyone who gave us your buy or sells today. Make sure you're back here tomorrow because it's Fan Mail Friday, where you can hit us up at all the same places, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, where we'll put a post out, on YouTube, where we will put a post out, and also on our Instagram, where we got a ton of contributions for buy or sell. If you just didn't get on today's show because we had so many, you might see it on tomorrow. We might have to cheat and repurpose it for Fan Mail Friday. But thank you to the everydayers, as always. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from, because we are the only daily Chargers podcast out there. But make sure you guys are back here for Fan Mail Friday. We'll probably also get into the new International Pathway Program player. I think a former rugby player the Chargers are potentially looking at to be a tight end, and much more. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.